Good morning. We'll call the committee of the whole meeting to order for March 20th, 2024. My name is Brooke Harris. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Barnes.
Present.
Mrs. Burdick. Here. Mr. Curran.
Here.
Mr. Sear. Mr. Demick. Mr. Fanton.
Here.
Mrs. Hanchett. Here. Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Havey.
Here.
Mr. Healy. Mr. Ricky.
Here.
Mrs. Ricketts Swales. Mrs. Root. Here. Mr. Rumfelt.
Here.
Mr. Stockin. 12 present, 3 absent.
Thank you. Long agenda today, but it's not as bad as it looks. I think a lot of light lifts, but the sheriff had requested to present to the board an update on the TAM team, the Threat Assessment Management Team. So he's here. We're going to get him up to the podium first so he can get out of here and we can do the rest of our business. Welcome, Sheriff. Thanks for coming.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to give a brief overview from my perspective of TAM, and then I'm going to have Deputy Tim Hand, who's been the project leader on this, and the undersheriff say a few words. The Allegheny County Sheriff's Office received a grant from the Department of Homeland Security at the end of 2022. The focus of the grant was counterterrorism training and preparedness to include domestic terrorism. Specific focus is the creation of a threat assessment management team. The purpose of a TAM team, as we call it, is to prevent acts of targeted violence, such as terrorism, school shootings, mass attacks in public spaces, all by identifying those threats or observable behaviors that may be concerning to others, as well as recognize intervention strategies to move individuals off a pathway to violence. The TAM team consists of members of multiple disciplines throughout the county that all have a stake in our community with varying resources. It's not just law enforcement. The team will include members from schools, the medical field, health, mental health, DSS, probation, and many more. Every team member provides a unique perspective and has a specific resource at their disposal. The goal for this team is early intervention to prevent targeted violence. This is a unique opportunity for us in law enforcement because typically we don't prevent crime from happening. Typically, a crime is committed, we get called, we do an investigation, and we make an arrest. This is a unique situation for us in that we may be able, based on these techniques in early intervention, we might be able to prevent a crime from happening. And that's exactly what we're hoping for. The creation of this team has taken us about a year and a half. Initially, my designated Deputy Tim Hand is the project lead, and he's been assisted by the undersheriff throughout this process. The undertaking included the development of policies, mission statements, agreements among participants, and mostly training. All TAM team members must be trained in basic threat evaluation reporting and threat evaluation reporting. We recently hosted this training at the Alfred Lake Lodge. The training focuses on the understanding of targeted violence, and it also teaches behavioral threat assessment and management, as well as the process of identifying concerning behaviors. Then you learn how to apply the behavioral threat assessment management best practices to assist in preventing acts of targeted violence, which is our ultimate goal here. So now we're fully trained. We're in a position where we can go operational. We have another meeting scheduled for April to get things really off the ground, but we still have the finalization of our policies and procedures and the official team members that we have to go through the legislature for, which we'll be doing as soon as we can. At this point, I'd like to invite up Deputy Hand and the undersheriff to speak a little more in depth about the TAM team and what it is that we will be doing. And then when we're finished, we'll open it up for questions and answers, if that's okay with you. All right.
Good morning. Come on up, Tim.
Thanks, guys, for having us and giving us the opportunity to let you know what we've been doing for the last 6 to 8 months. Like the sheriff said, this has been a process, and talking to Mr. Havey earlier, it's been like herding cats. trying to get all the right people at the table all at the same time. Roughly 6 to 8 months ago, the sheriff asked me to start reaching out to different stakeholders within the community. Everyone from the schools, the K through 12 schools that we have in our district, or in our county, which there are 12, and our 3 universities, building relationships with them, trying to get a hold of our industry, Lundstrom, Whitford's, places like that. Talking to our department heads within the county to get them on board, as well as some of the other partners that we have in the county as far as Accord, Acasa, Ardent Solutions, and getting them so that they would buy in. And really, it's been pretty easy. Everybody's been right on top of this and has wanted to buy in right from the beginning, sitting down, giving them packets similar to what you've got in front of you today. The schools, the colleges have had the biggest buy-in because they're seeing obviously some changes in the way things are being done as far as discipline, since we all were in school 30 years ago for me and longer. They're the ones that are really asking for this, because we have a couple superintendents that have done everything that they can and don't know where else to go. We have had, over the last just couple months since the beginning of the year, 2 or 3 cases that have been brought to us wondering if we were up and ready to go. One was a school district that had a young man that had a kill list. 13 years old, got pushed down in the hallway, made a comment that led some of his classmates to be curious. So the school asked me to come in. We interviewed the kid, the principal, the school social worker, the school psychologist, the superintendent, their SRO, and myself had a conversation with the child and his mother. The mother was super supportive, didn't know anything about it, but was very concerned. Hardworking woman that worked a couple different jobs. Supervision at home was, I don't want to say minimal, but there were times where this young man was left at home alone. Long story short, he admits to everything. The school takes their stance and they wind up removing him from the school for the maximum 45 days. But after he had left, that group does a really good job. This one particular school. And they were at their wits' end and they were just bouncing ideas. What do we do? And my suggestion was, and this is where the TAM team comes in and all the different stakeholders, my suggestion was, let's make that referral to probation or to the family court system and do a PINS, a person in need of supervision. He's 13 years old. There's a idea that maybe he's not being supervised as much as he should be, enough where he is making these lists and having these thoughts. It adds another layer to the supervision that he's getting. Probation, it's not their job to babysit, but they do hold, people more accountable than their parents in this case. So I believe, and I haven't followed up, they did their thing, and as of about a week ago, the child had just come back to school and it was a different student. I think the 45 days off and the counseling that he was getting and the supervision that he was getting had made an impact. The school did a great job. They did their background work and they talked to schools that he had been in prior to coming to this district. And that's really what that whole premise is of the TAM team, is having people from probation, the DA's office, public health, community services. Dr. Anderson will be involved, or Lindy, one of the two, as well as Ardent Solutions, Clarity. I don't want to leave Clarity out because they're one of the few mental health agencies that we have in the county. And that's really what this comes down to is we're lacking in a lot of mental health services, unfortunately. But this group of 15, 16 people sitting around a table can bounce ideas off from each other as to how to best represent and help this person that's thinking of targeted violence come up with some solutions as to how to avoid that. The presenting agency, as you'll see in there, there's some different acronyms or terminology. The presenting agency really would come in, like this school district would have come into this group, presented their information, said where they were stuck, and then it's really, again, bouncing ideas off from each other to see what services are out there that can benefit this child. The training that we had at Alfred just a couple weeks ago, the very first day is the basic threat evaluation reporting course. We had 80 people there. Everyone from all 3 universities to 6 or 8 of the different K through 12 schools, Clarity, Accord. There was people from all different facets, even some from out of county. One thing that, and I'll lay it on his shoulders, Tim O'Grady said from Wellsville, it's the process, and I know in law enforcement we struggle with it. We get to a certain point and we ask for help and they're like, it's your problem. It's nothing we can do. This group is hopefully going to tear down those silos that we're all in. Law enforcement's here, mental health is here, public health is here. Hopefully it will tear down those silos that everybody will start coming together and making suggestions and recommendations to that presenting agency that they can follow through. The one thing about this group is it's wholly confidential. No notes are taken, no records are kept at this group. It's really on the presenting agency to take the information that has been bounced around, what they can do, what they want to do, or are willing to do, and then moving on from there. In the packet I handed out, it's, if you look at towards the back, there's actually a case management flow chart. And when I was going out to some of the department heads and the industry out there, this group is really intending to focus on those bottom 4 areas. So the school district, the college, the law enforcement agency gets to the point where they've done initial risk screening. They understand that there's a risk of danger, a threat's been made, they don't have any other options. Moving that into, if it's a low risk, they may not have to do anything. But if there's some substance to it, moving it to the TAM team so that they can, again, come up with some hopefully helpful solutions. We had a case that actually came to us from Steuben County, what was it, a month and a half ago, where a employee at one of our utility companies had been ill over the last several years, had worked 30 days in like 2 years period. So the company made a decision to force him to come back to work or terminate him. They forced him to come back to work. He came back to work the 3rd day. He went to his union. I don't feel well. I need to go home. Even at that point, the union stands back and says, we'll go with you, but you know, it's kind of out of our hands at this point. We've done all we can do. As he left that day, he made some threats referencing the Texas Tower shooting of the 70s, 60s, 70s, and some other disparaging remarks that they felt concerned with. They called the state police do their investigation. They called the utility company's parent company, which is a conglomerate that covers a good chunk of the United States, and they took it seriously enough where they sent some of their key players out here from their security to talk to Mr. I'll leave his name out. And these guys that work for this company are all former FBI, Secret Service. This is their retirement gig. They were concerned enough where they reached out to us, and they also reached out to the TAM coordinator in Steuben County, just to put him on our radar. Now, after we did some background investigations and some work, there wasn't a whole lot left to do. He was terminated several days later, but they had done everything on their end to get his keys back to really do majority of the investigation. At this point, we didn't feel that it was anything worth moving into that TAM team model, but there was that potential. And we're continuing to monitor that situation as we go.
And you might mention, although the person is employed in Steuben County, he resides.
He
in
resided
Allegheny.
in Allegheny County. Yes, thank you. That's key. And we will get those kind of referrals. There's, a lot of people that work outside of this county that commute back and forth. And we'll get those referrals. This would be the first of many, I'm guessing. That's kind of the way the process is going to work, is that presenting agency will bring it to this group. I envision the group meeting every couple months. If it winds up being more than that, if there's more cases than that, it may turn into a monthly meeting where these things are hammered out. But I will leave that with you guys, and if you have any questions, please feel free.
Any questions? Mr. Rumfeld?
I don't have a question. I just want to say all the hard work you put into it was really appreciated. The training was awesome, and ever since, the training was like a couple weeks ago, and it's already cleared up what mental health and law enforcement can share. We've had a case that we couldn't get any information on, and ever since that training, now we get all the information. So the sheriff department's put a lot of work into this, especially Tim, and I just want to say thank you, and it is appreciated, especially through the law enforcement community.
It's one of those things like Mr. Rumfeld said. I view it as everybody coming together. If you look at a crash site, it's like the Office of OES, right? You have law enforcement, fire, and EMS. You go to a motor vehicle crash, all three of those components have to work together in order for that to have a good outcome. There may be some bleed over. Law enforcement may get there and have to wind up doing medical or first aid until EMTs get there. The car may be on fire. They may have to put the fire out. But those other two groups are so vitally important. Law enforcement a lot of times gets the brunt of the initial reports, or the schools will get the initial reports, and then they hit that wall. And like I said, it's really tearing down those silos, trying to get everybody at the table to communicate. And the training did, probably when I went through it, what it did for me was remove a lot of the stigmas and negativity about investigations and HIPAA laws, FERPA laws, the freedom of information, getting that from the schools, getting that from the medical facilities, and the exceptions to that when there is an active case of targeted violence, that those kind of go to the wayside. Go ahead, Mr. Barnes.
The situation in Wellsville the other day,
Yeah.
something that would be you would get involved with?
It very well could be. I think it's something that was a spontaneous event that happened in the middle of the night, and obviously we all know how it was handled, thanks to the undersheriff talking him out peacefully. But Wellsville did a great job. I asked Sergeant Green after that, because he had called me a week before and said, hey, I've got a case I'd love to bring to the TAM team when you're up and ready. So I went to him afterwards and said, is this the case? He goes, no. He goes, actually, it was a different case, but we're seeing this. That may be something that now that that's happened, he shows up on our radar, because he's not going to go away. He's going to come back to Wellsville at some point.
And this is where the coordination with like county mental health and other medical
Yeah.
services, and having that that open door policy where we talk to them a lot more freely and we can communicate with them. That's where that's going to come into play, where there's those other TAM team members that we've made initial contacts with. They'll get involved and we have, I think, a better line of communication with them than we used to.
Well, and right now what we're struggling with is we don't have a mental health, what I'm struggling with, not so much we've had this conversation. What I'm struggling with is on the list of the TAM team members that we have identified, I have Jim Helm's name on there from U of R Jones, which I think Jim should definitely be part of this group. The problem we face as a county is we don't have a mental health facility within the county that law enforcement or EMS are taking people to. It's either Olean General, it's Wyoming County Community Hospital, and they're not even accepting them at St. James. So we're kind of left at those communications, those avenues of communications with those two hospitals, making them understand what we're trying to do. Go ahead, Mike.
Jones Memorial won't take them even, I mean, I thought they were required by law to take somebody.
They are for a very short period of time, but then what they wind up doing is getting Dr. Anderson or a couple doctors to do the 2PC and having the sheriff's office transport them to a facility where they can actually be admitted. Jones, they won't admit them for psychiatric needs. They will only admit them for physical ailment. Olean has the psych ward. Wyoming County has the psych ward. So that's where we're, like, this gentleman went right from Wellsville. They knew that he was too much for Wellsville Jones to handle, so they took him right to Olean. When are we going to see him back in the community? And it's that relationship that they will now hopefully reach out to Wellsville PD and say, hey, he's done everything he needs to do and we're releasing him. You may want to keep your eyes open.
Gretchen?
I think it's a good direction to go. And I've had people reach out that have needed that help, and I have reached out to law enforcement,
Yeah.
and their hands are kind of tied, although they want to help. And it will get rid of some of the silos a little bit if it's organized. So I've seen your frustration. I've been frustrated
Yeah.
about trying to get it help for certain people that have called and wanted resources, and it really wasn't our job to solve it because we don't have that mental health background, but we needed resources. So I think it looks
think
like it's
that's-
moving in the right direction.
In knowing your daughter and
Yeah.
knowing that what she does in the school systems,
Right.
schools are getting all kinds of grant money to bolster mental health and those kind of activities in the school systems, I should say the K through 12 school systems. This is the first time we've actually had a grant that helps us outside of the education system start looking at ways to help through mental health.
Yeah, it's very different now, as you
Oh, yeah.
stated, from when we went to school, and I've also had the opportunity to work in the school systems now. So it's definitely something that's needed, and it's needed for support of the staff too.
Oh, absolutely.
So anyway, thank you.
This, just want to reiterate a few things that Tim said. What this does is this eliminates gaps through cooperation, okay? So typically, if law enforcement gets a report, we got a 13-year-old's got a kill list, and there's names on it. Our job is to determine, is this viable? Was there an overt act in the furtherance of the threat? Does he have access to weapons? Have you checked his internet browser history? Is he planning an event? That's our job, right, from law enforcement. When we get to that point in the investigation where we don't believe that a crime's been committed, we kind of take a step back typically. That doesn't happen now. So now, instead of taking that step back, we identify resources that we can make an intervention with this child. There's a reason the child made that threat. There's a reason he made the list. What can we do to better serve the child and the family? That's the ultimate goal here. We eliminate those gaps. And that's what RockTech has found, especially in Rochester, that early intervention is the key to all of this. Getting involved early with these kids that have identified issues and getting them the proper help and resources they need. That's really the ultimate goal here. And we can't do that without the cooperation of everyone. Everybody's got to be in the same room and on the same page to make this viable.
The colleges are really struggling with it. Not so much Alfred State. Alfred State's got a really good plan in place. They've got a behavior intervention team on campus, but they are also state funded. What I'm seeing, with my wife working at Houghton University and having good relationship with Alfred University, is they're really struggling because a lot of the private universities aren't getting the money out there to do these kinds of preventative things. If anybody watched the news, right in the middle of our training a couple of weeks ago, St. John Fisher, which is my alma mater, had a kid walk in and try to stab and sexually assault a professor, after normal class hours in the early evening. And both of our private colleges are going through similar things, struggling as to how to handle those situations. This gives them that outlet. This gives them the opportunity to bring that kind of stuff to this group and say, here are your resources. I've been working pretty closely with the chief of staff at at Houghton and director of security at Alfred University, and they're all on board. They are just waiting for this group to get going so they can start bringing stuff to us.
Question. So probably most of these threats manifest themselves in a school district or in a workplace. Is there an avenue for just a member of the public to activate the team outside of those parameters? And if so, how do you communicate that availability to the public?
Yep. One of the things that we're working on, now that I've got people agreeing to come to a meeting in the end of April, the last piece of paper that was in that packet was like a flyer that you'll start seeing hanging up probably in this building and the building next door, the schools. But we're working with, I've worked with Keith in IT. He set us up a hotline number. We're going to try to get him to set up a email and then start pushing that out. The grant that the sheriff received, there's a lot of money in there for the promotion of this. That's what we're finding is it's hard to spend the money. There's so many, and I'm sure you guys are all aware, the state gives you the money and then they put all these restrictions as to how you can use it. I'm learning that firsthand now, but they have, I think it's like $17,000 in there basically to promote this through flyers, through our internet, putting something on the county's website as well as our website, the sheriff's app. And then just good PR through the radio stations, Wellsville Sun. One of our employees' daughters is a salesman for the billboards around the county. So reaching out and just seeing how we can best get this out there so that the public will be able to, click on an app or scan a QR code or make a phone call and say, I see this guy going off the rails. I'm concerned because I just saw him buy, 2 handguns at the last gun show. We need to do some research on that. If somebody's calling and making those, maybe it's a collector buying a couple of handguns. But we can't assume that it is. We have to do our job and do some background and see where this guy's at.
So, I have one more question. So does the funding allow for you to hire a coordinator? Because
I'll leave that to you.
It does. It
because
allows.
it could get big.
It does. It allows for the offset of salaries, and we're planning on that. We've been working with the county administration and figuring out that component. I'll have something probably more on that next month.
Okay.
But
Because I
yes.
can see it getting bigger and needing
Yep.
somebody to coordinate it, to put
It's
it
a
out.
full-time job, honestly,
it
and
is.
it's probably going to be more of a 2-person full-time job down the road once it gets up and running. There's a lot of components to this. And frankly, this isn't a matter of if we have a critical event in this county, it's a matter of when, and everybody here knows that. It's going to happen. I'm not going to be the sheriff that says, well, I guess we should have done this. I guess we should have gotten this up and running. I'm not going to be that guy. So I'd much rather us try and get ahead of this and work on the prevention aspect. And I think that we're finally in a really good place. Tim has done a great job. The undersheriff's done a great job. We've got multiple other deputies involved in this that have been through the training. We're finally in a position where we can get this up and running. Yep.
Mike?
I'd just like to comment that I think government, in particular, in this case, the state of New York, has done everything it can to undermine the role of every other institution of authority here in the state, starting with the family, church, school, local government, your local community. We didn't have these problems 60 years ago, or very many of them. I remember when I went to school, you could take a gun to school. If you were going hunting after school, your buddy could take it on the school bus with you. So they have caused these problems by their liberal policies. And, we have to get back to the basics. And the foundation, try to attack the problem at the foundation, and we have to deal with it on the other end, what it's grown to be today. I commend you on all your efforts. I think we have to have a holistic approach to it. I'm here to support you guys any way I can. Thank you.
I have to say that we're not done yet. I mean, there's still a lot of work, like the sheriff said, there's still a lot of work. I've been to a lot of places, but there's still a lot of untapped places that I have not been in contact with. Local fire and EMS is huge because they see things that not a lot of people see when they're out doing their volunteer work. The clergy getting out to the churches, who better knows their people than the pastors of the community. So there's still people that we're reaching out to get them on board, but it's to Gretchen's point, it's not a thing that's going to be done anytime soon.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for all your work on
Thanks,
it,
guys.
and
Thanks
thanks
for
for
the
the
opportunity.
presentation. All right, we're just going to start hammering away at this thing. So Mallory, you're actually up next. And Mallory's just going to give us an update on the emergency management side of our eclipse planning. Oh, no. Welcome.
Good morning. So I have had the opportunity this week and last week and a couple other days to work with the Emergency Services Department and, of course, our partners. We've worked with a lot this most recently with the Department of Health to stand up and put together the incident action plan. I'm learning a lot about this. So we're putting this together to be prepared for any potential that may occur during the event. The health department has volunteered to take all the feedback from our community partners, state police. We've taken some information from the New York State Eclipse Plan, and then our community departments. We've had, the intent then is to pull in all the feedback, all the collection of information from our partners to have a final plan drafted by the end of this month in the anticipation, of course, of the event on April 8th. From those meetings has come up the suggestion of a tabletop exercise with scenarios of if this happens, then how do we react? What is, the best case scenario? How does this occur? Who has to be involved? And then also the discussions have suggested that we at the county building here, probably in the chambers, stand up a emergency operations center, an EOC. So that would be a lot of our departments. It would be a lot of emergency services, EMS, police, all of those partners in one location, ready to solve what issues that occur. So we don't have that nailed down yet, but it might seem a bit much. Some people might question, is that necessary? But it's not something that we've done at the county in a number of years. So doing this, using this as an opportunity to prepare will really put us in a better place should a true emergency situation occur. Are there any questions?
Deb?
So you're getting the feedback, and your timetable is by the end of March, you're going to have a plan put together. That's great.
I thought we were way behind and very worried out, so I reached out to another county that has a very seasoned staff and said, are we in trouble? And they said, well, we're not done with our final draft. We have our final meeting where we're talking about traffic flows and things like that. And it's a county that has a lot of scheduled events for the eclipse. Their final meeting isn't until March 28th, so we're okay. I was a little worried that we had dropped the ball. If our last meeting hadn't gone as well as it had, if we don't have department heads and professionals in our departments that are ready to flip on a switch and do their jobs and be effective and collaborative, then we would be behind. But Tyler and the health department have really much just like rolled up their sleeves and said, we got this. They have been, because of their role, they have to review these plans a lot, and they have their own pieces to add into the plan. So we're in a good place. We're ready. We've got good people.
Okay, so then, once you have that plan by the end of the month, are you going to implement that plan for the day of the eclipse? How do you envision this, using this as training for that day?
So part of that is the tabletop, where we sit down in advance and run through the different scenarios. There are a group of, I think it was 3 staff from the health department that just did a emergency preparedness training with the emergency services office. So they're ready to kind of quiz our department heads on if this scenario pops up, say, there's this traffic pattern and this, that, how do we cope with that? And it's a partnership between our law enforcement, maybe even our public works team has to call in a crew, depending on the scenario. But the tabletop exercise will help suss out some of those potentials, those what-ifs. The EOC would be the thing that is day of. We hope that nothing extreme comes, that we don't have any surprises. But standing up an EOC, as I'm very quickly learning, is no small task. Having all the supplies and the materials, and then those weird questions of, if the power goes out, is our internet connected to a backup generator? Will the internet still work if cell towers are down? All those little things that, I mean, it almost feels like Y2K all over again. As we've been joking about ordering analog phones, or, I mean, obviously just a joke, but this is such a fantastic opportunity when it's not an emergency situation where we can make plans and we can have something to take away from this event that will better our community for years to come.
Okay, I guess my question is, are you going to use the actual day, as that tabletop?
No,
And
the
set up a
tabletop-
EOC in here and go through the whole thing?
The tabletop is going to be April 4th, the day of, yes, if we do the EOC, that will be the day of. So that's not every staff member in-house, but that is the few mandatory emergency-related staff that will be included. Does that help answer it?
Jim?
So the plan going around to the fire departments and ambulance corps right now is not the plan?
It is a draft of the plan, and we're seeking feedback. That was the email
Okay.
that went out from Tyler.
No, this
If it
was
passed
from
along-
the fire coordinator?
Okay, thank you.
So that's not the plan?
That's the draft plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, thanks, Mallory. Okay, 2 quick things from the county attorney. First is we need to take action as a committee of the whole on Ag District Number 1.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, at the Resource Management Committee earlier this month, the committee passed or approved an MOE that was requesting a resolution to set a date for a public hearing on the 8-year review of Agricultural District Number 1, which is supposed to happen next Wednesday, at next Wednesday's board meeting on March 27th. Unfortunately, my office inadvertently did not prepare the resolution to come off of the floor at last week's board meeting. on March 13th. So I am asking for this committee of the whole to approve an MOE requesting a resolution for next week's board meeting, March 27th, to set that public hearing date for April 10th. And at that time, we would do the public hearing and then all the seeker resolutions that were also approved by the Resource Management Committee, with the intent that those 3 resolutions would go through the full board on April 10th, and then we would finally approve all the modifications to Agricultural District 1 at the last board meeting of the month on April 24th.
We'll take your word for it. Is there a motion? Okay, motion made by legislator Rumfeld, second by legislator Hanchett. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, Alley Cat Wind Farm.
Yes. So we have been negotiating with Alley Cat Wind Energy LLC a road use agreement for Alley Cat Wind Energy to use County Road 3 and County Road 36 for the wind farm project that is going up in the municipalities of Centerville and Rushford. And we finally have reached a agreement with them, and a copy of that road use agreement was provided. I have to thank Tom Windus for his assistance with helping me understand some of the technical language and for all his comments that he provided in helping to reach this settlement. So the highlights of the road use agreement are that the term of the agreement shall be from the date is signed until 30 days after the date which the project facilities are decommissioned. We do have a decommissioning clause in there which states that Alley Cat Wind Engineering would have to come back to the county and obtain any licenses, permits that they would need to decommission. They may also have to pay us money for the decommissioning process, and we would have to discuss what that would entail. They also have to repair any and all of the both county roads that they use, and all those terms and conditions as to how they would have to repair them are included in the road use agreement. There was some discussion about whether or not they would be cutting the roads. They assured us that they would not be doing any cutting of the roads, any of the county roads. We had really good conversations about it, and I am confident that we reached an agreement that benefits both parties.
Do you need a motion for anything today?
I need
or
a
is-
motion for a resolution to approve the.
Okay, let's get that first, then we'll go to Dwight. Are you making the motion, Dwight?
Yeah, I'll make
Okay, is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Ricky. All right, discussion, Mr. Phantom?
Yeah, is there language in there, this, 25 years when they decide they want to dismantle this thing, if they do, is there language in there that bond payment, for a bond payment, and how is that structured so that the interest that is developed goes into the, so the $1 million today in 25 years is not going to be anything.
So there is no language for a bond payment included in this agreement, and we did have a discussion about that because initially when this road use agreement came up a while back, when the prior superintendent was here, there was that discussion. However, we decided we didn't want to lock the county into a particular monetary fee at this time for the decommissioning project 20 years from now, because we really weren't sure how much it would.
So basically, they've got to do it.
So basically, they have to come back to us, so the decommissioning
Yeah.
language says that they have to come back to us at that time and obtain all the necessary permits, and we would decide at that time how much it would actually cost them to do
If this
it.
company's out of business, without a bond payment set aside someplace, then somebody's going to be responsible for it. And hopefully, it won't be the county.
Am I wrong here? The place for that wouldn't be in the road use agreement. It would be probably in the host agreement. You might ask them to bond against potential damage to roads and bridges, but I don't think you would force them to bond towards any costs associated with decommissioning the actual farm.
Somebody should.
I agree. Jan?
The decommissioning should be done with the agreement with the town that it's located in. I know our solar projects, we just issued a new decommissioning, and they have to, and it does allow for inflation over the years of the facility, and then also at the end of it, if they decommission, they have to come back. But ours is through ORIS, so there's a lot of requirements through them. But my other question is, can you explain to me why we need a road use agreement for each project? Why we don't have just a county road use agreement that would affect any project?
So we are working on establishing a template road use agreement that would work for any project. Alley Cat Wind Energy in particular, because they had to come to an agreement with the towns that they were having that the wind project was going to be in. Plus, they also had to have county roads used in both Cattaraugus County and Allegheny counties. So they already had a template that they insisted on working from.
Anybody else? John?
You may want to consult with Craig Clark too, because I believe there was a pilot on that. That was before my time at the IDA. So there may be something in the pilot agreement.
Okay, for today's purposes, the road use agreement, anything else? All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you.
Let's do this. Seeing no members of the public here that we're going to disrupt, does someone want to make a motion to take agenda item 11 out of order and address it now? Thank you, Legislator Root, second by Legislator Rumpfelt. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, now someone needs to make a motion for us to go into executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person. Motion is made by Legislator Fanton, seconded by Legislator